Alright, sorry about that. My cats seem to know exactly when to make noise, and that's when I am recording a video. So, had to grab a drink of coffee. Alright, so now that disclaimer is out of the way, let us proceed forward. Some of the notes I made about these, they come in 24, 48, and 96 packs. They are, and this is fairly new, I just noticed this the other day when I was on their website. They do sell these open stock. So if you run out of one of your markers, you can go over to their website. I'm not sure if these are on Amazon yet. If they are, I'll put the link in the description. You can buy, like this one's green 179. You can buy a 4 pack of green 179 for roughly $7 US. So they do sell the different colors in packs of 4 on their site, which is really, really nice, and I think makes these even more appealing because if you run, these are pretty small markers, and if you run out of one, you obviously don't want to have to go buy a whole nother set to get that one particular color. So that's really handy. While I have it here, this is what they look like. They have a clear plastic cap that pops off. They do have, it is a very soft brush tip, so when you press down, it actually bends to it. It's not a really tough brush tip. And it's a nylon hair brush tip. The marker itself is kind of long and skinny like a Tombow. Let me grab a Tombow for comparison. So, round wise, boy, that sounds real technical. It's about, it's a little bit smaller than the Tombows. Now, lengthwise, actually, when you take into account that that is another brush or another tip, if you start it where the other barrel starts, you actually get a little more length in the barrel with the Artezas. So, because this is the fine tip. Now, compared to the Tombows do have a brush tip as well, but it's a stiffer brush tip. So it doesn't, I'm sure through frequent use, these will get a little more flexible, but the Artezas are flexible from the get go. So there's a comparison there. Now, in looking at the color chart, which I'll show in a minute, there are going to be a lot of blues and a lot of greens. So if you're big on coloring leaves and nature, or you're looking for something that has a lot of blues, which most sets of coloring supplies that I've had have a decent set of blues, but those usually are like third in the number of colors available in a set, and these pretty much, they offer a lot of blues compared to a lot of greens. This set is lacking, however, particularly in yellows. You have two yellows that are true yellows, and then you've got kind of a yellow orange color, and that's pretty much all you have to work with. So if you're straight coloring, or if you're blending and shading with them, however you're using them, that's not nearly enough yellows in my opinion. They could go, they're nice and bright, but they're not that far apart, and I feel like they could have went with some softer yellows in that regard. At least another one or two would be really nice. Reds are and pinks are, they got plenty of pinks, but the reds are oddly small set available. I'm trying to look. I think 7 reds, which is unusual. Usually reds and pinks are the highest number of colors you have in a set. And then oranges, with the orange yellow, you have 6 oranges, which isn't bad in the grand scheme of things, but unless you're coloring like an autumn picture or something, I feel like some brighter oranges should have been included there. They are non toxic, and I just note that just in case your kid or dog or cat wants to chew on these, they are indeed non toxic. These on the barrel, they're called Real Brush Pens. And this is where things get a little confusing because when you go to their site, they're listed under markers. And that's what I take them to be, is our water-based markers. But they have Real Brush Pen as part of their name. So if you go to their site, they have pens and markers, and if you click on pens, these are not under pens, they're under markers. So in my opinion, they should just call them Real Brush markers. I'm not sure where the pen part comes from. I guess just because of the size of them or whatever, but I would call them Real Brush markers if it was me. So these are water-based, so think Crayola, think those types of markers. They're not alcohol-based markers. They have nylon brush hair tips, which I've already mentioned, and on their site it says they can be used with water to get a watercolor-like effect. And I haven't tried that, and we're going to try that a little bit today. I've had some people say don't do that because these are it's already ink mixed with a lot of water, but on their site they said, you know, hey, you can use these for that too, and that would give some versatility to them. So we're going to try that today. Now, let's take a look at the color chart. Maybe. Meow. Sorry, I have a cat out there squalling about something. Leroy's being stubborn this morning, I think. So, anyway, here is a swatch chart. One that it's an open-ended swatch chart, like a blank one. I got it from coloringpagesbliss.com. Jennifer Stay was kind enough to provide these on her site. So if you like the swatch chart, I'll put the link to her site in the description. So here is the first sheet of the swatch chart, and as I was noting, if you start here with the blues, that's a lot of blues. I mean, you've got some more mixed in with some of your greens down here, so you're talking at least one whole row, if not more, of the blues. Again, you really only have 2 yellows, a fair amount of oranges, a decent amount of purples. I actually am really happy with the purple offerings that are there. Actually, it goes all the way to here. And then, of course, we start with a lot of blues, a fair amount of pinks, but I feel like there could have been some different other shades offered. Your hot pink and your fuchsia look very close together, in my opinion. So, and then as for greens, you've got almost this entire row here, and then you've got more than half the row down here on the next level. So you have greens in all kinds of shades, which is really nice because their colored pencils are kind of the same way, and I really like the shades they offer in greens on both their colored pencils and with their water brush pens, markers, pens. Then we have some browns here. I particularly like their chamomile, and their ginger is really nice. And then you have a few grays, a decent amount of grays for a 96 set, and then finally you have your black. This starts a different group right here. I just kind of stuck all my water brush pens together. So that is pretty much it in terms of the swatch chart. So now we're going to get to the demo portion, maybe. So we're going to start out with generally what I do in the demo portions. If you have not seen my reviews before, I try to hit up a variety of books and a variety of different types of paper to show you how this performs on that type of paper and give you an idea of the versatility of the coloring supply. One thing I will say for these, I'm not going to tell anybody how to live their life or anything, but me personally, these are probably one of the few supplies that I will flat out say I'm not going to use in my Jade Summer books, which are on Amazon printed paper. And the reason for that is the paper really soaks up ink a lot. I have plenty of alcohol markers where, you know, I can sacrifice a little bit of ink here and there if I want to either straight color or blend with some markers. But with these, with the size of the pens, I'm worried about running out of ink very quickly in these pens if I use them on a Jade Summer book. And like I said, they are bad about soaking up ink, and I don't want to burn through this pen that quickly. It's great I have an open stock option, but obviously I don't want to burn through this pen very quickly. So if I were to use these in a Jade Summer book, I would probably use them for small detail areas, if at all. So, and plus the roughness of the paper probably would damage the brush tip over time. So how do these color? Well, actually, before we do this, let me go ahead and show you these. I have colored a few pictures with them. With Teacup Kittens, I did this picture. I think this was a carefree coloring video I did last July, because it says July 9th. I really should keep dating these. And this was the first time I'd used them. It's a straight color, and I really enjoyed using them and was really happy with how this came out. I also like their hats. Very, very crisscross 90s, in my opinion. And then Magical Fairies by Marjorie Sarnett. I did a page in here that the fairy herself, other than the sparkly parts, the fairy is entirely done in these brush pens, and I did use them to blend in like her skin tone and things like that. I also used them in the leaves themselves, and then filled out the rest of the detail work with gel pens. And I think I used a couple Copic markers for the background. I really like how she turned out. I screwed up here, and that's probably the only reason I don't talk about that picture more, is because I made a mistake and I can't quite get it covered back up. So now, this is Lacey Sunshine's Love Note Fairies and Angel Kisses. This is also on Amazon printed paper, but to me it seems to be a different type of Amazon printed paper, so at least for the demo I'm willing to use these in this book. So let's pop over to the page I am going to use. That was not the one. That's the one. There we go. I've actually not colored in this book yet. So we're going to do a little bit of both. We're going to straight color a little, maybe, and then I'm also going to color with trying to blend a little bit. Now, let me grab my color chart just to make sure. Now with yellows, like I said, unless you're going to want to introduce some orange into it, you really only have 2 yellows to go from. The acid yellow is slightly lighter than the lemon yellow, but we'll see how noticeable it is. So I am going to start with the lemon yellow. I'm going to start with the darkest color. Now, when using these do require some practice, because if you are not used to using paint brushes or watercolor brushes or anything like that, even water brushes with their softer tip, then these are going to be a bit of a learning curve. They're extremely soft, and it really is, it's like you have a paintbrush in your hand, and that's how you really should approach using them. So I'm going to lay down the darkest color, and then I'm going to come in. So that's the lemon yellow. I'm going to come back behind with the acid yellow. And because I know this paper will probably dry quickly, I am going to work rather quickly to try to use both. If it does not work, then we will just straight color with the lemon yellow and call it a day. Alright? Alright. So, generally this is how I approach it. I just go, I'm barely touching the paper with it right now, so. And like I said, you're going to want to work fairly quickly with this. And depending on how quickly the paper dries, if you want a true blend, you may have to go over it a couple times. And that's where I get concerned about the Jade Summer books, because I know the more times I have to go over to try to create a blend, this is the acid yellow, then the more I'm using my ink. So I am moving back and forth on this. This paper's a little tougher in my opinion, so it can withstand a little more kind of not scrubbing motion, but similar to that. Plus, it's a toothier paper, and going back and forth like this allows me to actually get down into the tooth of the paper a little better. It's not a super smooth surface. If you do this on toothy paper, keep this in mind, that you may have to work at it a little bit to be able to get it down into the tooth of the paper. So there is that. And see, I can't really tell a difference between the two yellows. There's not enough. I don't even want to go back over it just because I don't think it's going to make that much of a difference. I'll try though. Yeah, see, really having to work at it with a brush like this, I'm worried I'm abusing these water brushes. So there is that. And as you can see, there's really not a lot of difference here. So just for comparison's sake, let's straight color the other side with, not with the acid yellow, with the lemon yellow, Michelle. While I still consider this a little better than the Amazon paper that Jade Summer books are printed on, it is still a really toothy paper. And your brush pens will have some abuse with this, so I don't think that was really a strand of hair, but it is now. It wasn't before, it is now. Creative license. This does not feel smooth. I feel really rushed with this. Again, my recommendation is not to use these on very toothy paper unless you're willing to invest in replacements. Now see, I did this side just in the dark, and you really can't notice a difference between the two. At least I can't. You might be able to see it better on camera than I am, but yeah, I really can't tell the difference between those two. It's a little disappointed in the yellows, not gonna lie. They're very vibrant. As you can see, it just pops off the page. It's very pretty. It's just there's not a lot of options for yellow. So we will move on down to her dress. Now this one, I'm hoping we can actually see a little bit of difference. Which blues was it? I think Peacock Blue was the darkest, Sapphire Blue's a middle blue, and then you have your Carolina Blue at the bottom. So that's what we're going to do here. I'm going to go ahead and uncap all three. Maybe. Because like I said, I want to work quickly here, so I want to make sure I can quickly switch between the pens. And we're going to try to work in smaller sections this time. So I'm using the darkest color here, where there would be a little bit of a shadow. At least in my head, I see the shadow. And then we'll switch to the Sapphire Blue. And then we will switch. Actually, let me go down a little farther with that. Now let's switch to the lightest blue, which is Carolina. We good? That's, you can't really tell a whole lot. You can definitely tell the difference. It's starting as it dries, you can really start to tell the difference. Okay. So I'm going to go back with the darkest color, and I'm going to put down another layer here. And I'm going to start dragging it down into some of the lines in her dress, which is where you would see some shadow too. And then I'll follow up with a sapphire blue. That second layer comes in handy because that's when it starts staying on the paper long enough for you to blend. I probably should have done this one first, and then we could have gave it time to dry, but that's okay. Oh, this one. That's fine. Now I'm getting mixed up in the colors I'm using. You can start to see a little bit of a shade difference as it dries. Probably go ahead and do her entire skirt just to see if we can really get that difference. Alright. So, peacock blue. And it's trying to get away from me. There we go. If you are going to use it on this paper, I would recommend working in small sections. Probably even smaller than I'm working in right now. Now when I get close to these flowers, I'm a little more careful with how I'm doing the brush because I don't want to color over the flowers if I can keep from it. Put a little bit of the peacock blue down here. And then we'll switch to the Carolina blue for right here. So if you do enjoy like painting this, you'll enjoy using these. If I get a really good blend going and I really get into the picture, I could spend hours doing this myself, so I really enjoy it. We got slammed with rain last night. I live up on sort of a ridge area, and while a lot of people think that that means you're safe from flooding, I mean, there still are low-lying areas up here that really get hit hard when we get a whole lot of rain. I think the last time we got that much rain was probably around the time of the flood. Nashville flood. So I think we had a pretty rough one last year where it was a flash flood that came up so quick. A bus was driving towards the road and saw that the water was across the road and moving, and so the bus tried to turn around, and it was so fast that it got to the bus before it could get fully turned around, and they had to bring in rescue boats to get the kids off the bus. Oops, went over those flowers a little bit. But a lot of people were like, why did the bus driver drive into it? Well, she didn't. She was trying to turn around. She was doing what she was supposed to do. It was just the water moved so fast that she didn't have enough time to get away from it. That kind of stuff is what's really scary. You can have that kind of flash flooding anywhere, even in an area like this. So, but no, I mean, we just kept getting rain and rain, and some of the areas in our community that are in kind of low-lying areas, of course, get all the runoff and everything else, and we did have some flooding happen. I don't know if any rescues had to happen. Thankfully, I think the rain stopped enough to let everything kind of recede, but they'd had to close a few roads, and yeah, it was a lot of chaos. It started raining around 4 or 5 in the afternoon, and I really thought it wasn't going to stop, like a heavy rain. I really thought it wasn't going to stop till like midnight, but fortunately it stopped around 7 or 8. And what we got here? Sapphire. So we're just going to go ahead and finish the skirt. This is one of those situations where if I don't go ahead and do this skirt now, and I'm going over the flowers still, but that's okay. If I don't finish the skirt now and I restart it, it's going to look janky. If I do decide to come back to this picture, which I often do, I'll start a test page, and the reason why you never see me use more test pages in the future is because I usually end up just going ahead and finishing them. I'll get into what I'm doing, and the other ones won't be so bad because plus this gives the upper part of it a little bit more time to dry, and you can actually see a color variance happening. So there's no real huge rhyme or reason other than the lines in her dress that I'm going by, so I'm just like, okay, well, I'm just going to use the brush here. And that's pretty much that. I don't have any techniques or anything that I use. It's just good old, just throwing it on the paper and seeing how it looks. I can come back in with a Posca pen later and fix some of those areas I did go over. Alright, and then we're going to go ahead and we may have a line happen regardless just because of how quickly it dried, which is a shame, but probably another good reason why I wouldn't want to use these. I don't think I can work quickly enough over a large space like this to keep it from doing that. So, and the only way you could probably fix it would be to go back over some of it. And I'm just doing that with the lightest color. we'll see what happens here. Definitely gonna have to give that time to dry, so. What do I want to, oh yeah, we're gonna try with the water. So what I'm doing to try the actual watercolor effect is I'm using a plastic palette and I'm using a water brush, which is surprisingly enough an Arteza water brush. So I'm just gonna put some of the color in the palette. We'll do her shoes with this. Put that off to the side. And go ahead and get some water going on my brush. And we will try our shoes first. Ooh, very nice. Again, you have that quick drying paper, so you're gonna have to work frequently. You're gonna have to work pretty quickly to get a consistent color. And I probably should be using a smaller brush, but again, lazy. No, I don't know what is up with her here lately, but Sid will not leave me alone when I'm at my desk. I don't know why. She gets plenty of attention, I promise you. I don't know why she does that. I mean, it's a constant battle with her up here, and normally I wouldn't mind, but I know I'm going to have to stop the video if she gets up here, so I'm trying not to stop right in the middle of this again. And that's going to be darker color than the other stuff, but that's okay. Actually, it functions better with water than I thought it would. So, yay for that. And there you go. Let me pop that off to the side for a second, and let's back out. So that is how they do with Amazon printed paper. Look at that. Anyway, that's how they do on Amazon printed paper. I would say very toothy paper. They're probably going to function very similar. Okay, it does have the right mic. It soaked up the ink pretty well. If you look on the opposite side, you definitely have bleed through, so be sure to put a page behind it to protect the paper behind it. I definitely wouldn't use this on double-sided Create Space paper, or used to be Create Space paper. I still call it that, I guess. So we're going to put her to the side, let her dry a bit. We're going to move on to what I'd consider a mid-range book, which would be Lost Ocean. Aww, come here. Yeah. I'm okay with sacrificing that page. If need be. I actually have not tried these yet in a Joanna Basford book, so I'm not sure how they're going to do. We shall see. Where are my blues? There. I figure we will focus on this fishy. There we go. I try really hard to keep the caps on them when I'm not using them, because like I said, the last thing I want to happen is for these to dry out. So it's a pretty tight area. I don't know, except for the back end of the fish, how much blending I'll be doing. We might try it. Actually, let's try it between the darkest and the lightest a bit. We could see it a little better that way. Maybe. Now you can use them in tight spaces. That's what's good about the brushes, but because they're not, it's not a really stiff, solid kind of tip, excuse me, on these, you have to be very, very careful. Or like me, just go over the line a little bit and tell myself that I'll just go through it with a gel pen or a fine liner and that'll take care of it. Now the lack of consistent brush strokes isn't as much the paper as it is just I'm not super used to using brushes, and even if I use these and come back to them, I still have a I have to kind of relearn them. I'll tell you what we're going to do too, because this is driving me a little crazy. I'm going to go back to my color chart real quick. To the color chart. So I'm using Peacock Blue. Good one to use would probably be an Ocean Blue. So, what color is this? That is bright blue. Ocean blue. Okay. Hopefully this will show it a little better. One of the things I like about these markers, another thing, is they do have the color on the bottom part of the marker, and the reason why I like that is because the way I have them stored, I have them with that color dot of sorts facing outward, so I can easily, I should be able to easily distinguish the colors, but I'm not familiar with them enough to be able to do that. So, ooh, yes, this is nice. I like that a lot. Should have been using this to begin with. Go outwards just a little with it. Switched over to an ocean blue to give us a more obvious color change. And like I said, I am in no way being super precise with this, so I'll just use some fine liners or gel pens if I ever want to go back and work with this fish. So, but this is more of a testing page for me, so I don't think that'll be a problem. Let's see what happens when I... Yeah, see, this one was going to be a little tedious to demo because I knew it would require a little bit more effort than just slapping a marker on paper, so... But I wanted to show you guys what these can do. Alright. So So let's tackle the big part of the fish. Because this is where you'll really see it. So if I'm going over the area where the colors meet a couple times with the lighter color, it's actually giving me the blend I need without necessarily going back over it with a darker color. Unless I want it to be more obvious, which I might do here in a minute. Because this peacock blue is getting a little lost because I'm doing that, so... And the more ink you put on the paper, of course, the more, more likely it is going to bleed through, so keep that in mind. This is pretty smooth paper, so I already feel like a huge difference in using these on this type of paper. It's a lot easier to work with them, in my opinion, on smoother paper. Okay, there we go. Now, let's try the watercolor real quick. And let me hit the camera. Okay, so which fishy is getting this treatment? We'll do the one right there in the middle. So I'm going to put this in one, and then I'm going to put the ocean blue in the one below it. And we'll see if we can. Well, I'm a little crazy with that. All right, so. Now the amount of time this is staying on the paper is just noticeable from the get-go. The paper is not soaking this up. Like the Amazon printed paper did. So you can go a lot farther with putting the ink on the palette like this, which is one of the main reasons I like doing this, because this will make your markers last a lot longer if you're using this method for them. There we go. We have a watercolor fishy. Now I'm not going to pull it straight over, but let's look at the back of this, shall we? All right. I'm back with the camera a second. So, here is the one we used with the actual ink. As you can tell, there is some ghosting. There was a little bit of bleed through starting to happen as I was putting the ink on it. But the watercolor one is pretty much right here, and you're not seeing anything happening there. So these, as long as you have a light hand and you're not using a whole lot of layers, I think you could even get away with using the water brush pens as is on this type of paper. So there is that one. A lot of books I'm trying to draw right now. And finally, I guess is what you're thinking, we're going to take a look at Color It at Blissful Scenes, or Color It Blissful Scenes coloring book. I actually got this for Christmas. I don't think I've done a flip through of this yet. I don't know what happened. I think I got off track or whatever. So we're going to go to the page I've been working on some, little bit at a time, and that is this page. I'm probably going to use a mixture of mediums on this. Right now I'm just doing a little bit of it at a time because this is a lot of green and it's a lot of detail work. So we're going to switch a little bit on our colors just for this page, and I'm going to show you the greens that I'm working with. I'm working with just green, and then basil green is my darker color on this. Now, this paper is super smooth, even more so than the Joanna Basford books. So, I have learned on this to have a very, very light touch. There we go. So basically what I do is I just take the darker color and I'll hit the areas that would be darker on the leaf, vine, whatever. And then I just come in with my green and I go over that line a few times and then just draw it out into the rest of the leaf. And it's subtle, but I am getting a shading effect when I do this. It's hard to tell when it's actually wet. It doesn't look like it, but then as it dries, you can see you're getting that darker, kind of almost a blue-green effect that's moving into the green. Yeah, that's the way to put it. It's green. This page is incredibly intimidating to me, just so y'all know. That's what I was saying. I haven't gotten in a groove enough with it to just want to work on it forever. I'm having to just work on it a little bit at a time because I don't really know where I'm going with it. The one bonus of having a smooth marker type paper to work off of is that your ink is going to stay on the surface a lot longer than it would with any other type of paper. So you can go a little bit farther like this and the ink is still wet enough that you can blend them. I've noticed with this, like I said, you need a very, very light touch, otherwise you'll get outside the lines. Obviously some of that has to do with the tiny areas I'm working in, but I would say with this type of paper, less is definitely more, which is really nice because again, it will help your markers last a lot longer. I keep calling them markers even though they're called pens because they're markers. I'm calling them markers. That's just what I'm doing. So we're going to give that a second to dry, and then I think I'm going to show y'all a page where we can use the blues. I had a page picked out. Now I'm like, I don't know if I want to use that one. I will use this one. This will work. I just need to give that a second to dry. But yeah, that's the whole picture there. Of course, it's got a cat in it. Y'all should have known better. It will take a little longer to dry than usual, so keep that in mind. This is what we're going to do. I'm going to put another blotter page behind that. We're going to put this in front of this. and go ahead and flip it over. I don't think it likes much more. We didn't do a whole lot on that page, so we will move to this one, which is cupcakes. Like I need more food in my life. Okay, so we have our peacock blue and our ocean blue. And we're going to use that on one of these wrappers. I think we're going to use it on this one. So like I said, I'm barely touching the paper with this. It's always interesting to me with mediums where even with different types of paper, you have to learn how to work with something in a different way. It can be done, you just have to learn that different way of doing it. It may just be slightly different than what you're used to. Alright, Oreo, no fighting this morning. Alright, so now we're going to come in with the ocean blue. And I'm going to go over that line area a little bit. Try to bring them together. I may have waited too long and went too far, but that's okay. We can go back over it. If you're not big on detail work and having to work like just very lightly in a situation like this, I wouldn't recommend these. It's weird, like I look at a page with a bunch of detail work and the idea of doing that with, I don't know, gel pens or something just feels exhausting, but sometimes I can grab these, and if I have a good color blend going and I know what colors I'm using and how things are going to turn out, then I can do this kind of stuff for hours. And it's soothing, but I've got to have a good blend and I've got to have a good color selection going in order to do that. Otherwise, it also feels tedious, so... Go ahead and go over. Alright. Give that a little time to dry. And we will find another one to do the watercolor with. While that's drying. Goodness, what is wrong with my voice this morning? Go ahead and clean the brush off. Alright, so grab some of the dark blue. Might have been too much of the dark blue. Nope, that was the right amount. Now, what's interesting when you use a water brush or watercolors on the marker paper, the problem here is that it is so smooth and the ink stays on the surface for so long it almost beads up. I don't know if you noticed it doing that. Again, can be done, you just gotta be able to work around it a little bit. So now you get a really vibrant pop of color Actually, I'm going to try something here in a minute with that. I'm not too worried about the ribbon. If I want to finish this picture, I can always come through. Gel pens cover a lot of oopsies and fine liners, so let's see if we can get a little bit of a blend. Trying to use very light hand with the brush on this, just like I do the actual water brushes. Now you're going to get a very, very big watercolor effect on this type of paper. Like, it's going to be a wash. It's going to not be quite as vibrant. And you're going to have to give it plenty of time to dry before you put something else on it. So let me try something here. I went over this with just the water brushes. Now, or the brush pens, markers, what have you. So what I'm going to do now is go over all of this with the water brush, and let's see if I can get anything to happen different. I thought perhaps if I could dilute it a bit and it wasn't 100% dry, that I could blend it a little better. But I don't know if that's going to be the case. Because one of the things you can do, now see, you couldn't see half of what I was doing, I bet. You can see here, this is still beaded. This up here is drying, but if you use watercolor on this type of paper, you're going to have to give it extra drying time, and you're going to have to be aware of, if you really go with like watercolor effects like this, it's going to bead up. You're going to have to work at it for a while, and it's not going to be like, it's very tedious. You're going to want to use probably more, the Joanna Basford paper seemed to do really well, or a watercolor paper would probably be the best thing to use for that kind of interaction. Now, one thing I am going to try real quick. Heck, we're already at almost an hour. Why not? If you stuck with me this long, let me grab a red. I can't get redder than red, the actual color red, can you? Okay, so I'm going to dry off my brush. We're going to try, one of the things it suggested was, let me zoom in. No, we're as zoomed in as we're going to get. Okay, there we go. One of the things it suggested was you could create a line of color and then pull it in with the water brush. So we're going to create a line with this. We're going to see if we can do that. A little more water than I wanted, but that's okay. That is pretty cool. And of course, if you do too much, I'm just curious to see. It's not really going to let you. I was hoping it'd let you add a little color to it, but it doesn't look like it. You're just going to have to wait for it to dry. So you can do that, you just need the right kind of paper in order to do that. For instance, as we're letting this dry, let me go ahead and put soft side. You can see this is still wet. So if you were ever curious to know what watercolor does on like marker paper, then there you go. Alright, so we're going to roll back to our Lacy Sunshine, maybe, possibly. Yes. So if we did the same thing here, say we created a line on this heart, we wanted to pull it in, let's lay that down, make sure the brush is cleaned off. See, it dries so quickly on this type of paper that you can't really draw a lot of it in. You're gonna get that harsh line like that. You might get a little color. I mean, we got a little bit of pink, but nothing to what you expect it should do. So that's the reason why you wouldn't want to do that there. But no, I wanted to show you how everything else looked when we finished. Honestly, out of the different ways we tried the markers, I think I liked the watercolor effect the best. I think it turned out looking the best in my opinion, but if I were to use that, I would have to work very, very quickly. And let me show you. These brush pens do have skin tones. There's a pale skin, light skin, and a fair skin. Let me show you these real quick. They are okay. I feel like it might be the light skin. One of them is way too orangey, in my opinion. You know that Teacup Kittens picture I showed you with the cats? They were actually colored using one of the skin tone pens. And I think it was the light skin tone. Looked way too orangey to me. And this is supposed to be fair skin, but to me this looks like more of a light tan. You see this? This is fair skin. No, excuse me, this is pale skin. This is not pale. The marker is not pale skin. This is more of like a light tan, in my opinion. So there is that. So again, I like if you're going to use them with Amazon printed paper, I would suggest using them as watercolor and just knowing you've got to move quickly with them. Alright. Oh, and there went something. Y'all knew I couldn't have that much of a mess without something happening. Now, this one has dried. I like both effects on this one. Let me grab my red. I like both the watercolor and just using the pens themselves. I think the paper is smooth enough that you'll get a lot of mileage out of a little bit of pen. Just keep in mind that when if you go over and over it with layers with the actual pen, marker, whatever, you may get some bleed through or ghosting on the other side, so just keep that in mind. We're going to try seeing what this does. Alright. Hopefully that's not blurry. Yeah, you're kind of getting the same thing here. I'm getting a little more color coming off the line. Hi, Leroy. Please don't step on my keyboard. You're pulling off a little bit more color, but it's still, compared to the rest, to the harsh line left behind, you're not getting a lot of pull off of that. So I think the lesson there is to, if you want that kind of effect where you can do that and then pull the color off the line without having that harsh line, You're going to need to use watercolor paper or like marker level type paper if you don't want that line to still be there. And it's blurry. But there is that. And then finally, promise finally, y'all are like, oh dear God, please. Oh! We will go back to this one. So there is using the actual brushes themselves. Wow, no, that's what I was about to say. Using the actual brushes themselves, I didn't get quite, I still got kind of a line here, which I probably could go back and fix if I wanted to, though I need to put a paper behind it. Because even on marker paper, if you use enough ink, it's gonna bleed through. But we did this, and then I showed you my leaves, which actually have a really nice blend going. So I would feel comfortable using these on this paper. I'm just have to be really, really tedious. It feels tedious with them, so if that's not your jam, I wouldn't recommend it. The watercolor effect turned out very nicely, in my opinion, for both the rose and for the cupcake holder. And it is still wet, as you can see. So if you use that on this paper, it's going to take a long, long time to dry. As far as bleed through, that is from using the actual brush pens over and over, and you get a little bit of buckling when you're using water, and that's kind of hard to see, but you can get an idea of it. So I would use caution on double-sided pages. If you really want to use it on a double-sided page, I think using it as a watercolor is going to be your best bet. So yeah, these were the Arteza Real Brush Pens, is what they're actually called. They're in the marker section of the Arteza website. Where did I put it? There it is. Back up the camera a little. The 96 set is currently selling for the 96 set is currently selling for $67 US ish on the Arteza site, and $70 ish on the Amazon. But for me, at least, I noticed this morning I have a $10 off coupon on Amazon, so that actually brings the price down to $60, which I feel like is a pretty decent price for these, particularly because now you have the open stock option. The 24 pack, if you just want to try them out, is currently $23 on Amazon. And the nice thing about open stock is you could buy the 24 pack and you could from there build your own set if you just wanted certain colors. So that's one thing that's really nice for those. The open stock set of 4 for each color is $7, and like I said, that's on the Arteza site. Final thoughts on these: I like them. They're different. They're very vibrant. I love how bright these colors are in this. They do take some practice to work with. I wouldn't just grab them and think that they're like a Crayola brush tip, or that they're like any other type of brush tip marker that I have. They are going to be they are very soft. They are more like a paintbrush. If painting is not your thing, then you probably don't want these. And when I say Crayola, this is a Crayola brush tip. As you can see, it's a very stiff brush tip. That is not the Arteza brushes. They are very soft. If you're not a fan of painting, I wouldn't recommend these. They can be blended, and you can use them as watercolors. Just again, it's going to take some practice with them. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this review. Tried to be as thorough as I could, obviously. And if you have any other questions, put them in the comments. Thanks, and bye for now.